Steph Curry is the greatest shooter of all time and has completely revolutionized the game. Now we have a league where every single player is looking to get the three whenever possible, and even centers are stretching out beyond the arc. His shooting has completely shifted the league, but what if this revolution started earlier? We're gonna find out by going back to the 1960s, where we'll be starting Steph's career as he plays forever through every era and matches up with the greats of their time, all while seeing how his shooting would redefine every generation of the sport all the way back to the modern day 2024. All starting off in the 1960s, where he'd rightfully be joining his own team, the Warriors. While there was no three-pointers during this time, Steph's ability to stretch the floor was still a massive advantage, even if it was only for 2 points. The league had not seen anything even remotely close to Curry at this point, and this allowed him to absolutely flourish. Defenses of this time had no answer for him. If they played back, he was getting off deep jump shots, but if they played tight, his speed would allow him a free shot in the paint. By all accounts, Steph seemed unstoppable, and the stats he was putting up would show for it. While he was being titled the league's MVP already in his first season, and to go along with it came a lot of team success. While a lot of that was due to Steph's greatness, it can't go unstated just how great of a co-star he had. Wilt Chamberlain was playing the man in the middle and was a dream pairing with Steph. The combined athleticism of Wilt paired with Steph's spacing, speed, and playmaking created a duo that had a legit chance to go down as the best ever. Without surprise, the team was making their way into the playoffs and they were looking like the best team. Needless to say, Wilt and Steph together is just unstoppable. Granted, there's only 8 teams in the league, but 78-4 is just crazy. And that craziness was continuing in the NBA playoffs, with round 1 being against the Syracuse Nationals. The Nationals really didn't stand any chance here versus Steph. This first round was simply a formality that had to take place and would end in a sweep before the actual challenge. Because moving to round 2, the great Bill Russell was on the other end. Of course, paired with other all-time greats like Kuzi, they would be a formidable opponent, or at least you'd expect them to be. All until Steph completely flipped the entire league around and showed that he was head and shoulders above everyone else in this era. His speed and quickness was just far too much for anybody to try to defend him, and you can't help on D because he had an outlet to Wilt Chamberlain every single time. There was absolutely nothing Boston could do, and the Warriors were steamrolling by them as well. And now they find themselves in the NBA Finals thanks to the 60s only having 2 rounds. While the Hawks were the best team in the West this year, they still hadn't come close to the magnificence of Steph and Wilt together. These finals would be just as underwhelming as the rest of the playoffs have been, and already in year 1, Curry is being crowned a champion in this era, but the question remains on just how much he'll alter this time period. And as we move toward the next season, we'd find the answer to our question soon enough as we track his accomplishments in every era. But here in the 60s and 70s, with only a handful of teams in the league, it's likely we'll see the same matchups over and over again. So in order to prevent repetitiveness, we'll do a quick overview of his time in this stretch so we can quickly move on to the more exciting eras like the Bird and Magic 80s, the Jordan and Bulls Dynasty teams of the 90s, and of course the 2000s that was run by Kobe Bryant and his Lakers. For now, back in the 60s, the Warriors were on a complete rampage. In 61 and 62, they would still be in Philadelphia, and both years they were still eclipsing the Celtics, who seemed to be an undefeatable dynasty. They went on to the finals and defeated the Lakers in back-to-back seasons to close out the three-peat, and that wouldn't be the last that they were seeing the Lakers. Because heading into 1963, the Warriors moved to the Western Conference, and for the next several years, they'd face and defeat LA year in and year out. The city would be the only thing changing though, because they were still finding great success. The duo of Wilt and Steph were continuing to have the NBA in a chokehold. With matchups against the Celtics in 63 and 64, they'd have the closest series so far during the stretch, but the Warriors were proven to be way too much. The championships were still pouring in, and the media couldn't get enough of this exhilarating duo. That's now 5 championships in a row for this duo of Curry and Wilt. They beat the Celtics again. This has got to go down, in my opinion, as probably the greatest duo to ever play basketball together at any level. But that was all changing in 1965 with Wilt leaving to Philadelphia. The NBA play-in and playoffs are right around the corner, so now is the perfect time to talk about today's sponsor, Underdog Fantasy, the easiest place to play fantasy sports. With Underdog Fantasy's pick'em game, you guys can win big cash while watching your favorite players, and the best part of it all is that Underdog Fantasy is hooking you all up by doubling your first deposit up to $100, as well as giving you an instant pick'em special when you use code Allen during sign-up at underdogfantasy.com or from the App Store. To play, go to Underdog Fantasy's site or use the app and find the Pick'em tab. Here you can choose whether your favorite player will have a higher or lower stat total. Pick between 2 and 5 players to create your pick'em entry, and if you get them right, you can win up to 100 times your money in one night. I've been playing a lot lately, and I'm on a huge hot streak right now, and I'm looking to continue with the playoffs. In particular, I'm really excited for the Bulls playing game, because yeah, it's awesome winning money, putting your ball knowledge to the test with Underdog Fantasy's pick'em game, but to me, the best part is watching your favorite team, favorite players, and you have a pick'em entry, and every time they touch the ball, the feeling you get while you're watching. So again, go sign up today for Underdog Fantasy and use my code Allen to get your first deposit doubled. Big shout out to Underdog Fantasy for sponsoring this video. And now let's get back to Steph Curry. Steph would still have all-star Nate Thurman to run the pick and roll with, but it wasn't the same. Curry got his team to the playoffs again, where he would face the Lakers, but for the first time in his career, he was being outdone. Elgin Baylor and Jerry West together had enough to finally get past Steph now that he was left without his superstar big man. He was losing for the first time, and you have to wonder if this was his downfall. But you have to mention there was some light at the end of the tunnel. Rick Barry was drafted that next year and would instantly add a spark to the Warriors. Steph and his team were already turning things around, and they would be ready to make more runs through the playoffs. The next 4 years were all conference final showdowns between the Lakers and the Warriors. By now, both teams had talented rosters, and the matchups could easily go both ways. LA would go on to win one of the 4 matchups, but the other 3 years would result in finals trips, one of which would be against an old friend, Wilt Chamberlain. This resulted in huge headlines of the once allies now being rivals. The finals was looking to live up to the hype early on into the series, with the two teams and superstars trading blows back and forth to deadlock the series at 2-2 tie after 4. Past the first 4 games though, Steph would break this series wide open. He was taken over to add on to his incredibly impressive 34.2 points per game during these finals, and after 6, he was adding yet another championship to his collection. And while the next year he'd make it to the finals again, this time he'd be coming up short to the Celtics, who were in their last years with Russell. And as a gift for his retirement the very next season, Curry was sending him off in defeat one last time, just like he had most of Bill's career. And with Russell walking off the court for the last time, it brings us to another side story alongside Curry's. Because not only are we tracking the success of Steph over the next 65 years, but we'll also be tracking how it impacts other all-time greats as Curry completely alters their eras. And Russell wouldn't be the last, because in the 70s, Steph was continuing to make a huge impact while being aligned with great talent on the Warriors. As the game slowly started to evolve, so did Curry's stats, who was still looking to be a step above his peers. He continued to push the narrative on what the standard was for greatness in this league, and the awards would pour in. Yeah, so far Steph has got like 1 million MVPs, but this one in particular, I don't know what happened. I don't know where he got 12 rebounds a game, because he has like a 60 defensive and offensive rebounds. And on top of that, this season he had a 72-point game. That's like unheard of a guy his size back in this era. I mean, he's completely changing the game. The postseason would still look like Curry's own personal playground in this decade. While he'd face more of a variety of great players now, like Kareem and the Bucks, or Walt Frazier's competitive New York Knicks team, he was still finding success more often than not. In his 6 trips to the finals in the 70s, he was winning 5 of them, and that would be closing off the early NBA era and leaving Curry with already a GOAT caliber career. But we have a lot more to see, and things are really about to shake up. For one, we had Magic Johnson entering the league and his all-time rival Larry Bird joining right there with him. While these two would be huge threats to Steph, this year had even bigger news. This is the season the NBA was introducing the 3-point line.
One of the rule changes that the fans are so interested in, of course, is the 3-point play this year.
Yeah, it's going to add another dimension. It's going to be exciting to the Devil Act.
Now Steph's abilities were completely being unleashed, and these deep bombs that he's been shooting are now worth an extra point every single time. His stats in this first season after it was introduced were by no surprise more than enough to earn an MVP, and the whole world forgot about Magic and Bird, because everybody was talking about just how insane Steph's shooting was now. This would be a massive year for Steph fans, but heading into the playoffs, I was worried. The Warriors are set to match up with the Lakers here in round 2 of the playoffs, who we know has Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and the Warriors have their worst seeding, I think, since Steph entered the league in 1960. I would be shocked if Curry could find a way to take out this Lakers super team on his own. Although it was looking like Steph might be proving me wrong early on in this series, because while the first game Magic Johnson was far too much for the Warriors to keep up with, the second game on the road, Steph was on an absolute mission to keep his team fighting. With a massive performance, Curry was showing that he was still the big talk in the league, and he was helping his team have this series tied up. However, the Lakers were swinging things back in their favor with a big Kareem game 3, and late in game 4, Steph risked going down 3-1. With just shy of a minute remaining, the Warriors are down by 5 to the Lakers. They're risking going down in the series 3-1, which would be next to impossible to come back from, especially with Magic and Kareem. But Curry, he has a chance to get this thing tied. He draws the foul. Both free throws are good from Steph. There's still plenty of time here, especially with as good of a shooter as Steph is, where they can still come out on top in this match, tie the series up, and have a chance to move on to the conference finals. Not with defense like that. Kareem is wide open. Warriors now on the other end. This is huge. I mean, Steph has to do something. If you want to start this 80s era right, man, you need to do something this season. Start things off right. You need to win this game. Steph serving the field, pump fakes. He's in the post. Steph does not have a post game to be down there like that. They're swinging around. I don't even know who half these guys on the team are. Steph doesn't have the ball. This guy's taking a pull-up fade. He sinks it. They're going to have to play the foul game now. I just realized the Lakers don't even have Magic out there. Whoever that point guard is, he hit both free throws. Now Steph needs a 3. If you're gonna win here, you could have just pulled it. Look at all that space. Steph is choking. All of that space. How do you not score there? They're going down 3-1. Unfortunately for the Warriors, things were going to be out of reach here. Magic Johnson was running away with this thing and looked to be a new top PG in town. But I'm not really sure you can even blame Steph. I think without a doubt, Steph's biggest issue here is his team. I mean, he does have like year 3 or 4 Robert Parrish here, who's not here for much longer. And then other than that, it's just a bunch of not good players. You really can't expect him to do too much when this is what is built around him. I mean, granted, his own personal playoff performance this year wasn't too great, where he's normally really good in the postseason. 24.5 points per game. He's probably getting doubled a lot. I'm not really sure how much better he can do than this. This could be a really rough patch for Steph. I mean, moving on to next season, Steph does get another MVP though. So, I mean, I guess that's a solid with 27 points a game, 5 boards, almost 9 assists, 2 steals. But it really didn't reflect in the standings as much as you would like. 4th seed. They couldn't even get the 2nd seed to compete with the Lakers. I don't see them making it too far here. They might be able to get to the conference finals and play the Lakers there, but I don't see them beating them. Their round 1 matchup against the Suns, and actually they'll play the Lakers in round 2 if they beat the Suns here in round 1. Phoenix's team doesn't look too great. Dennis Johnson's probably the most notable name on this list, but they're probably still better than the Warriors outside of Steph. Let's go ahead and simulate this round, see if they can beat the Suns, advance round 2, play the Lakers. They do. They end up winning 3-1. But I mean, there's no way they're beating this team. Magic Johnson, Kareem, who cares about anyone else? How do you get by these two? They're in the same situation as last year. They split games 1 and 2. They're down 3-1 yet again. I think this is going to be literally a replica of the season prior. Golden State Warriors have been eliminated. On the bright side, going into 82, World Beat Free gets a little bit better, and I think this is Bernard King's first All-Star season, for whatever that's worth. I mean, relying on Bernard King to save the day is kind of crazy, but maybe this season could be a little bit better than last year. They're getting a little bit better. Well, no, they're still sitting right here at this 4th seed. Nothing has changed. They're very consistent, and they're gonna have to face the Lakers again in round 2 if they win round 1. Steph didn't even get MVP this year. Pretty low stats compared to what we saw during the 60s and the 70s. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that this team is like really moving the ball. Look at this, 15 points, 19 points. Yo, that dude's head is just, that is crazy. Portland Trailblazers in round 1. Let's go ahead and simulate the round, see if they can advance to round oh, they couldn't even get to the Lakers this year. And just when you thought things were starting to get better and couldn't get worse, they get worse. I mean, Bernard King is gone. They're fucked. 83 was another first round exit, so we skipped to 84. And the record here, it speaks for itself. I thought they would be a little bit better with Steph. I know everyone else sucks, but I mean, come on, man. The one good thing for Steph is his contract is about to expire. And this actually happens to be the season that the NBA introduces the salary cap. So maybe if the Warriors can't afford him, maybe he gets lucky and he ends up on another team. You can actually try to start winning something here in the 80s. Unfortunately for Curry, the Warriors were able to re-sign him, and now he was stuck in this poor situation. He continued to play at a very high level himself, but his teammates around him were also continuing to lack any substantial talent. This led to some underwhelming records, and it was looking like Steph's time with the Warriors was coming to an end. And that's because in 1988, unrestricted free agency is officially a thing. And as you would guess, a lot of teams are offering Steph Curry the max. And it's kind of ironic because right now is when the Warriors are about to start getting good again. They just got Chris Mullin. They're about to get Mitch Richmond. He would actually fit in perfectly right now. And I feel like they could probably run through the 90s if he sticks it out. But I actually don't even see the Warriors offering him a contract. I don't know if they have money. I know they just got Ralph Sampson. They just got Chris Mullin they're paying. I don't know. Maybe they will offer him a contract. But out of the teams that are available, the Suns could be interesting. Him and Charles Barkley. Get Charles some rings. Stop Jordan from a feud. The Jazz, I don't want him with the Predator. The Kings, I didn't even know they had a team yet. The Super Sonics with Sean Kemp could be kind of cool. The Knicks with Patrick Ewing, that would be interesting. The Spurs, David Robinson is over there. There's some definitely teams here. Oh my goodness, the Pacers, him and Reggie Miller together. Man, that would be exciting. All in all, though, with all these teams that are available, I think I would most like to see him on the Suns with Charles Barkley. All we can do, though, is advance and see who Steph Curry ends up joining. So now it's the moment of truth. Curry is not on the list anymore. We're going to click our button here to go to the signed players, and we're going to see where Steph has signed. Steph was officially becoming a Phoenix Sun. Right away, he had more talent all around him with teammate Kevin Johnson, who was top 10 in the MVP race this season. They were both small guards, but Steph's willingness to play off the ball or on the ball allowed for a great dynamic. They also had some other great shooters like Major Lee and Hornacek. Without a doubt, this team was the best shooting team in the league, and this, of course, was before shooting became so common. The pace they were playing with was through the roof, and other teams struggled to keep up. In the end, they'd secure the best record that year, and Steph was eager to make another run. In round one, Hakeem Olajuwon and the young Rockets were his opponent. While Olajuwon would give Phoenix a plethora of issues down low due to their lack of size in the interior, it still wasn't a major issue for the Suns. Hakeem would get 2 points most trips down, but then on the other end, Steph was getting a 3 more often than not. Overall, the Suns' offense was just too much and would fiercely outscore Houston en route to a 3-0 series. The next round was about the same, except for the fact that the Blazers star was a guard. Either way, the results were the same. Curry's offense was just far too unstoppable again now that he had some help around him. Just like they had in the first round, they were winning again, and next they had the conference finals. Oh, it's on now. Steph has the chance for revenge versus the Lakers, who kept them from like any finals in the 80s, and with no Kareem helping Magic, oh, I think it's gonna be Steph. Steph waited nearly a whole decade for this moment, and there was no chance he was gonna let it slip away. Magic had been beating him in the playoffs year in and year out for years now. It was finally time for the tables to be flipped with no Kareem there to save the day. As he and his team were completely demolishing the Lakers, it was clear that this stretch with Phoenix was going to be far different. The torch is being passed back into Steph's hands, and the league sure was in trouble. He and his high-octane shooting team were sweeping the Lakers to make a huge statement, and again, the world was all talking about Steph. And moving into his first finals of the 80s, he played another top PG. During the 80s, Mark Price was considered to be one of the league's top guards. He fit in well with this era and helped the Cavaliers stay competitive for several years, but he certainly wasn't Steph Curry. Backed by a fresh look around him, Curry was ready to get back on top of the mountain, and it didn't look like the Cavaliers would be stopping him. Cleveland still managed to put up a respectable effort and even won 2 games. But in game 6, to close this series out, Curry put his playoff experience to use and will put up 48 points on his way to overcoming Cleveland. Finally, after a decade of struggling, Steph was coming on top in the 80s. It's been a long time coming. Finally, Steph wins a finals in the 80s. Finals MVP, no surprise there. 26.4 points per game. He's really getting a lot of help out of Johnson, surprisingly. I mean, I knew he was a good player. I didn't know he was that good. I just peeped 75% from 3. Yo, Steph is a man on a mission out here in the 80s. Can he keep it going? Now with 1 year left in this era, Steph looked to be a man on a mission trying to improve his legacy in the 80s. And he'd have that opportunity back in the finals again against the Pistons. Now, as we all know, Detroit was a very gritty, aggressive, and physical team. They had a lot of talent at every position, and they were one of the best defenses in the league. If Curry was going to win against this opponent, he'd have to be on his absolute A game. Although Steph had an advantage over many other greats who struggled to beat Detroit, his game was primarily perimeter oriented, so their dirty style of play in the paint really wasn't affecting him, and it led to a relatively easy series. After only 5 matches, he and the Suns were repeating, and that would be closing up the 80s. Of course, he had limited success in terms of rings during this time, but he was still a household name in this era. The impact wasn't massive in terms of other stars here, but Steph did have a slight effect and picked up momentum at the perfect time, because the 90s had a major rival waiting for Curry. Come the 91 finals, Steph was meeting the man himself, Michael Jordan, who many consider to be the GOAT. Curry hasn't yet and may never see another player like this. Jordan was taking advantage of the small ball lineup being run by the Suns. Oftentimes he was left with a much smaller defender on him, and it was making things far too easy on him to be scoring. This year is going to be an offensive slugfest between Mike and Curry, but for now it was Jordan making the first strike. But of course, it was a 7-game series and not a single elimination, so Steph had more than enough time to get back into this series. The second game, still at home in Phoenix, was a quick turnaround as they hit Chicago right back to tie everything up. These back and forth wins against each other would establish a theme in this series because those weren't the only matches being traded back and forth. These two teams seemed to be equally matched because the first 6 games of this series would all bounce back and forth wins without either team being able to get any separations. This would set us up for a climactic Game 7 where only one of these two all-time greats were going to come out on top. While it was impressive that Steph pushed Mike to a Game 7 in the finals like nobody else ever could, his time in the series was coming to an end. We were officially seeing what a Game 7 finals Mike looked like, and it wasn't pretty for the Suns. On both ends of the floor, he was clearly the best player, and even though Steph still played well, it wasn't enough to outlast Jordan. 47 points for Steph Curry here in this Game 7 in the finals, 6 boards, 6 assists. He shot a perfect 6 for 6 from 3, a very good 16 for 21 from the field. His team just had a lot of turnovers though. I mean, this was the big problem here. 5 for Steph, 5 for Hornacek, 3 for Johnson, 3 for Chambers. They just could not hold on to the ball. And despite Steph's fantastic game, they still ended up losing here. 115 to 127, lost by 12. Even with as good as Steph played. And that's because Michael Jordan had 58 points. We never got to see a Game 7 Mike in real life and never went to more than 6 in the finals. And 58 points is crazy. Mike and the Bulls were defeating Phoenix, and this was surely a hurdle Steph would see a lot. Or at least I thought they were going to face the Bulls a lot. I really thought they were about to be in the finals again. We were going to cut to right now, me talking about them being in the finals again. They lost in round 1, man. The Houston Rockets ended up beating them in 5 in round 1. How does this even? Oh my god, they lost Game 5 by 1 point. I just cannot even believe it. I would have showed you guys what happened, but I clicked simulate playoffs because I thought they were gonna go straight to the finals. I'm not at a loss for words. It was a big year for Steph. 28 points a night, 8 assists. He got the MVP this year. He played well for the season, and even the playoff stats are good. His teammates even did well. Tom Chambers was going crazy. I think the issue is they don't have a good big man. Hakeem Olajuwon just destroyed him. The roster just might not be good enough. They got a lot of great guards and some wings. They don't really have any good big men, but luckily next season they're gonna get a good big man. Phoenix was adding Charles Barkley to the roster, and he was a player who had been in MVP conversations year in and year out and fit perfectly with Steph. He could play in the pick and roll as the roll man, able to score, or he was capable of running a reverse pick and pop with Steph as the screener. With Barkley now on the team, the Suns were seemingly favorites to win it all again, and their super impressive season was proving it. Very, very good season for the Suns. Best team in the entire league. They even did better than the Chicago Bulls. While Steph's numbers definitely did drop now with Charles Barkley also being on the team, I think it's for the best because they should be able to just run through the NBA for a year. But first we have to see if they can beat the Houston Rockets, who ended up defeating them last year. So let's go to simulate this round, see if they can get by Houston. Oh my god. Oh my. Houston won that first game. I almost had a heart attack. Portland in round 2, that should be another freebie. They should easily be able to get by Clyde Drexler. They do, and now they have the Utah Jazz and the Predator. I think we're gonna have a rematch versus the Chicago Bulls, and that's exactly what we have. Things are completely different this time around with the matchup versus the Bulls. With Barkley now being a second very high level option, there was going to be a lot for the Bulls to try to compete with. 2 years ago, Steph was able to push this team all the way to 7 by himself, so it would go without surprise that now with another MVP caliber player available, the series would be looking very different. Mike was able to get his team 2 wins at home in Chicago, but Curry was actually doing something that would completely rewrite the GOAT debate. He was officially giving Jordan a loss in the finals after winning the series in 6. And on top of that, the NBA would have a major change.
I'm very solid with my decision of not to play the game of basketball in the NBA.
Now that Jordan is retired, I don't see anyone beating this roster. I mean, come on. You got Curry, you got prime Charles Barkley, Kevin Johnson's getting even better. The Bulls couldn't even beat him last year. Who can do it now? To be honest, the one team I am slightly worried about is this Rockets team that beat them a few years ago, just because of how good Hakeem Olajuwon is himself, and they don't have a good big man. But I think as long as they can beat this Rockets team, they should be good to go. To my surprise, the Suns didn't face the Rockets at all, as they barreled through the West into another matchup with the Bulls. I'm not sure how Chicago made it this far, led by only Pippen, but Curry would be swiftly adding another ring to his collection, because if the Bulls couldn't win with Mike, they sure as hell weren't going to do it without him. The following year, Shaq was the one waiting for them in the finals, and he would terrorize their paint defense because, yet again, the Suns lacked any interior depth to compete with great centers. Luckily though, Curry and Barkley's offense together was still proven to be way too much to keep up with, and they defeat the Magic in 5 games for their 3rd championship in a row. Then we all saw this coming. 96, Jordan is back on the Bulls. We have another finals matchup, Suns versus Bulls, part what, like 5? Chicago did get a bit better than the last time we saw him. They added Dennis Rodman, who could be an issue for Charles Barkley. Their defense got a lot better. They got Kukoc, they got Harper, Steve Kerr. They got a solid team. We've already seen these matchups and dissected them enough. Let's go to simulate through these games, see if Steph can get one more win here in the 90s. He's got his first win right here versus the Bulls. Simulate another 1-1. It's all tied up. Simulate another. Uh-oh, the Bulls might be running away with it. Phoenix is fighting back. We got a game 6. We're gonna simcast this one because if the Suns win, they win a championship. If the Bulls win, we have a game 7. Right now, it's looking back and forth here in the 4th. Anyone could be winning this game. Oh man, it's close. It's down the wire. Let's hop in. So Chicago does have the ball. 4 to 3 seconds. They're up by 2. They score here. That's probably the dagger. We're probably gonna go to a game 7. But if the Suns gonna stop, they have a chance to tie the game or take the lead. Scottie Pippen throws the alley-oop. He misses it. Jordan doesn't catch it. Steph off on a break. They have numbers. They're not gonna go quick. They slow it down. I think I would have pushed the pace. Steph Curry, he's getting a screen from Charles Barkley. Curry, one man to beat. Steve Kerr is not good enough. Curry over his future coach. He ties this game up. This thing is all tied up now. 24 seconds just about. Michael Jordan has plenty of time to make something happen here. They get the ball into Harper. It's got to be in MJ's hands. You can't throw no sloppy alley-oop again. Get a turnover. Give it to MJ. Let him cook. They're running down the clock now. 13 seconds remaining in this game. They're waiting for this last shot. Jordan trying to flare there. Oh, Jordan cutting back door. Jordan down low. Rodman. I thought he was going to shoot the 3. They're swinging around. This is terrible. What are they doing? Scottie Pippen for the win. For the win. Pippen saves Jordan. Now we officially have a game 7 in the 1996 NBA Finals. It's only right that we simcast this. Who is going to come on top? Is it going to be Jordan taking a ring, or is Steph going to steal one? And it's right now looking like Steph. They have a massive lead. Curry and the Suns have a huge lead. I don't think that there's any way the Bulls can catch up. There's no way it's over. Phoenix is champions yet again of the National Basketball Association. And in this game 7, great effort from both Barkley and Curry. Really, Barkley turned it up a notch with 32 points. Steph still had a very solid game. They didn't hit a single 3. They're champions once more. I think that is 4 or 5 in a row now. But unfortunately, next season is going to get a little scary because Mr. Charles Barkley is about to be leaving for the Rockets. Though the one positive after losing Barkley was the addition of Jason Kidd. He wasn't a star just yet, but his playmaking was a huge help to Steph getting open looks, and the media coverage around the duo really hyped it up. But with Kidd still not quite in his peak yet, they'd be losing to the Jazz in the playoffs in both 97 and the 98 playoffs, but that would change soon enough. In the 1999 season, Jason Kidd was taking a jump to becoming one of the NBA's top tier guards. Not only was his playmaking the most impressive in the league, but he was also developing into a talented scorer. He was a legitimate candidate for the league's MVP, and by no surprise, come time the playoffs rolled around, he was a major help in making a deep playoff run. In the conference finals, they would face the San Antonio Spurs, and even though the young Tim Duncan was exceptionally impressive, his efforts weren't going to be enough. The Suns would advance past them to make their 7th finals in the 90s. Now Steph was left with a matchup against the Alonzo Mourning-led Heat, and this was certainly his easiest matchup he's had since the 94 Bulls without Mike. I'm not sure how they were able to make it here over the New York Knicks, but the one thing it did do was make talking about this series easier. Steph was smoking Miami in the series and was helping Kidd get his first ever championship. But this would be his last victory in the 90s because the following year he ran into a Kobe and Shaq Laker team that was miles ahead of Phoenix at this time. Kobe was the future of the league and it was showing here. But for now, Steph was happy to close out the 90s with a very successful stretch in the GOAT's era. Speaking of the GOAT, he and Kareem were taking the biggest hits to their legacies now that Steph had spent time in their time period. And now moving into the 2000s, Steph had more help. Shawn Marion was the league's most improved player, and he was now playing at an all-star level. But was he enough to overcome the Lakers? They'd face off with them in the conference finals again, as we'd get to find out. Now with Marion coming to form, they had one of the best defenders in the league available to attempt slowing down Kobe. But that would still leave Shaq, and Phoenix still had no good centers to compete with the Aristotle. Luckily, Curry had the answer for this problem, just like he did years ago against Orlando in the finals and against so many other teams over the last few decades. He was outscoring the opposing team that often was looking for two-point shots close to the rim, while Steph was letting out a barrage of three-point attempts. In the end, this would be too much, even for one of the NBA's greatest dynasties ever, and Phoenix was actually pulling off the win. Well, after an exciting series with the Lakers, somehow the Charlotte Hornets are in the final. Steph has definitely been blessed with like some not so great opponents once he makes it to the finals. I don't even know how these dudes even got here, man. Nonetheless, though, we'll go ahead and simulate some games. I think the Suns are gonna sweep. I think Curry's gonna get his first championship in the 2000s. Looking like it. The Phoenix Suns are champions once more. And oddly enough, the finals MVP actually goes to Shawn Marion and not Steph or Jason Kidd, who is about to be leaving. Kidd was making his way out to the east to join New Jersey. And while Steph was left with another Steph to help him, it wasn't exactly enough to compete with the early 2000s West. Honestly, the Suns still did pretty good. I think in real life they had like 30-something wins this season, so pretty big jump just by having Steph Curry. And it looks like they were dealing with some injuries, with Shawn Marion even being hurt right now as we speak. Steph missed 13 games this season. Honestly, if they were healthy, they'd probably do even better. The scoring from the entire team is pretty well spread out. A lot of great scoring options on this team, and this Warriors team is their matchup for round one, led by Gilbert Arenas. I'm actually pretty confident that Phoenix will win this round, so let's go ahead and simulate it. They're gonna come out on top, but then they're probably gonna face the Lakers, who almost lost to the Clippers somehow. But against the Lakers with Kobe and Shaq, I still think LA's probably gonna come out on top. Maybe Phoenix can surprise us. They're up 2-1 right now. Let's simulate the round. They actually do come out on top versus the Lakers. Had to go make sure everyone on LA was healthy, and it looks like they are. So somehow Steph and this Phoenix Suns team, they're doing the unthinkable. They beat the Lakers here, inadvertently preventing Kobe Bryant from getting another championship. Not because Steph won, but because he was able to beat him. Although he does still have a chance to win. He has the Timberwolves now, and on the other end, I see that the Hornets somehow are in the conference finals again. It makes no sense to me. Timberwolves tied up 1-1. Phoenix is up 2-1. 2-2 now. We all know game 5 is huge. Let's simulate that game. Minnesota goes up, and now we're gonna go ahead and simcast this final game. If the Suns lose here, they're out of the playoffs. But if they win, they force a game 7, have a chance to make the finals. I didn't expect them to do good at all, but they're getting smoked here in this game 6. But Steph had a pretty good bounce back here in 2003, adds another MVP to the collection, and got his team the best record in the entire West, outclassing the Spurs and the Lakers. Maybe this team can do better than I actually thought. Facing off against the Warriors again in round 1. They beat them last year. Can they do the same this year? They're actually down, and they get bounced in round 1 to the Warriors. I think the Warriors beat someone in real life in round 1, didn't they? The We Believe Warriors, something like that. Oh my God. Which now brings us to the last year in the Stephon Marbury era to team up with Steph Curry. Can they get it done? Can they win at least one championship? That's not a good start. Amari getting hurt. And at the All-Star break, it's not looking very good, because last year they were the 1st seed, but now they're the 5th seed with a 31-19 record, which isn't bad, but it's definitely not the 1st seed. Maybe they can improve by the end of the season. And going into the end of the season, they maintained about that 5th seed there, 50-32, which is still really good. And in round 1, they're going to be facing this Grizzlies team, who quite frankly is a pretty good team. So we're gonna go ahead and simulate the round, see how it ends up going. Can they outlast them? It looks like they're actually gonna sweep them, which I'm kind of surprised by. But now they face the Lakers, who yet again we already know just how good they are in these early 2000s. And unfortunately, Phoenix was not able to upset them this time like they did a few years back. And that's gonna end the Marbury era, because Steve Nash is officially a Phoenix Sun. He was on his way to becoming a back-to-back NBA MVP and may have been the best PG in the entire league. His passing abilities were above even that of Jason Kidd, and he fit in flawlessly alongside Steph. On top of that, he was also a fantastic shooter in his own right, which created a new look Splash Bros. Without Steph on the roster, this was already one of the best teams in the league in real life and had talent at every position. When you add Steph to the 7 seconds to left offense in Phoenix, you get possibly the most high-powered offense offense this league has seen. And with that said, the Suns are enjoying the league's top record. And in the first round of the playoffs, Kobe was waiting again, like always. But now with no Shaq on the team, the high-paced offense of Phoenix had literally no threat of being defeated. We all know how great Kobe is, but he was falling easily. In the second round, they met Golden State again and would beat them like they have a few times now. Aaron Davis and his group were falling in a sweep. And finally, in the conference finals, they ran into Nash's old team. This was his opportunity for revenge on the team that gave up on him, and Curry would allow him that revenge by taking a step back and letting Nash dominate, which is exactly what he would do with some very impressive stat averages. This would be a closer series than the others, but Nash still had enough to get it done. Dirk was falling to Phoenix a few wins short of the finals. Eventually, the Suns were matched up with Boston, who was good, but only really had Paul Pierce. Phoenix continued to prove why the Suns were the favorites to win it all, because even here in the finals, it was clear that no team was able to hold a candle to this offensive juggernaut. Steph and his team were cleaning out yet another series to end up as champions, and their run of this era wouldn't stop there. In 2006, against Wade's Heat, they'd win another finals in 6 games before going into 2007, where this time they played LeBron's Cavs, and that was a win in 5. Going into 2008, the Suns were acquiring Shaq, who wasn't as good as back in the day, but he'd still make one All-Star game in Phoenix. He would come in handy come the finals to have a big body in the paint to match up with KG and the Celtics. Their big three was intimidating, but the Suns were still seemingly too much offensively and would win this series after 7. 2009 was another rematch with Boston, and history would repeat itself, much in part due to Shaq playing better this season than the last. Again, the Suns were outlasting Boston, and this time was a bit easier because after 5, they'd be celebrating what would possibly be the last win for this group. As we know, all great things must come to an end at some point, and with Kobe determined to get back to the finals, it was looking like this long dynasty had reached its time. Bryant was defeating this team finally in 2010, and that would end our era of the 2000s, in which Steph found a lot of great success, and the other legends during this time certainly took some decent hits to their legacy, but this loss to the Lakers may have just broke apart the Suns. Because in 2011, Marbury was moving up to the Knicks and Nash was getting old. This meant it would be yet another rough stretch for Curry and Phoenix. Yeah, this Suns team... It's not good, man. Did Shannon Brown ever have this kind of hair? I don't remember that. Either way, though, if we start simulating this regular season, I can almost guarantee, yeah, look at that. The losses are about to be pouring in this season. And they don't get any better until like a decade from now when Devin Booker starts to get good. I don't know what Steph's gonna do. And more importantly, as they are 1-21 for the season, I don't even know why he's staying on this team. I mean, this is the main problem right here. Every time he's a free agent, he decides to re-sign. I mean, look at the loyalty, extremely loyal. He doesn't leave his teams. I think the only reason he ever joined the Suns was because in 88, the Warriors didn't offer him a contract for some reason. So he signed with the Suns, and he's been re-signing with them since. And this is just going to be a really bad stretch if he does not get off this team. I mean, as you can see, every team and their mother is sitting offers for Steph Curry, and there is some teams here I would love to see him play for. Interestingly enough, the Heat and the Lakers are offering him some really disrespectful amounts, $2 million versus 50 million. But I mean, that would be an insane super team. LeBron, Wade, Bosh, Steph Curry, or you have Kobe. He could reunite with Steve Nash, who's on the Lakers now, Dwight Howard. That would be ridiculous. Even the Warriors are trying to bring him back. They've probably been trying to bring him back since the 80s. That franchise has been a joke ever since he left. The Celtics, like everyone wants to have Steph on their team. He's gonna end up being back on the Suns, though. I just know it. Yeah, sure enough, he did stay on the Suns, and as you can see, I simulated quite a few years into the future. We are now at 2021, right when Devin Booker starts to get good, and I think that they may be able to start winning some. All these years I simulated, Curry didn't do anything even close to the definition of winning. They did a lot of losing. And now I know some of you guys are wondering if this man right here was able to win some rings with Steph not in the Warriors. He's on these losing Suns. Warriors aren't his way. Maybe he can win some championships. No. It did not work out. In 2015, he did end up winning, but then 2016, he lost to the Thunder, who lost to the Warriors in real life. And then the next year, he lost to the Houston Rockets with James Harden. And then the year after that, he finally won. So I think he got one extra championship out of it, but it was nothing crazy with no Steph and the Warriors. And yet somehow the Suns still aren't doing anything special. I swear 2K hates Devin Booker. Anytime I get a player on this Suns team, they still lose, even though this team is stacked. And here in the playoffs, I was going to get some footage and talk about the series and this final stretch for Steph, but they're down 3-0 versus the Pelicans, and they might just get swept. They actually end up winning a game. No, maybe they could come back down 3-0. It might actually happen. Yo, hold on. We're going to a game 7. Of course, we're going to have to simcast this one. A game 7 after being down 3-0. The Suns could actually make history. I don't know if that's worth going down, but it's looking like they're getting blown out in game. Oh my God. And the next year isn't doing any better for the Suns. Kind of anticlimactic here in this final push. I don't want to, adjust things, fake it for the video. Try to keep the sim authentic. But it would have been cool to see them win some games here. I'm just at a loss for word how they cannot win with Steph Curry. I think that this Suns team is cursed on 2K. But with the addition of KD to the team, surely they'd break that curse. We already know just how great the pairing of KD and Steph playing together worked. Durant was helping the Suns defeat the Mavericks in the first round, but round 2, disaster struck again. Yo, come on. 2K has to have something coded where this team, they can't win. Every time I do sims with these 2020 Suns, they always lose, man. Steph's got one more season. Bradley Beal's going to be joining the bunch. If they can't get it done then, I don't know. Again, they made the playoffs and it was against the Thunder, but clearly it just wasn't meant to be. In round 1, even with as much talent as they had, they were still being bounced easily by OKC. Curry's career started way back in 1960 with him winning every season, and now at the end, he seems to be losing every season. Nonetheless, his long 65-year career was filled with tons of accolades and success that Steph can be proud of. His story was coming to an end here, but Kobe's story is just starting in this next video, where I made Kobe Bryant play forever.